The jungle of Zithra 7 was unlike anything humans had ever seen. Its towering trees glowed faintly, their translucent leaves shimmering like stained glass under the dim light of 3 moons. Streams of liquid crystal flowed through the forest floor, creating a soft hum that resonated in the air. But it wasn't just the beauty that made this place. Strange it was the way everything seemed alive, pulsating with energy. To the Valeth, this world was sacred, a testament to their dominance over nature and technology combined. To humanity, it was simply another corner of the galaxy they weren't allowed to touch. Kale adjusted his tool belt as he stepped carefully over the uneven terrain. He was 24, wiry but strong, with dark hair damp from the humid air and eyes that always seemed to dart around, taking in every detail. His left arm gleamed faintly in the twilight, a sleek, metallic prosthetic coated with adaptive nano. It wasn't armor. It was part of him, replacing what he'd lost years ago during an accident on Earth's orbital colonies. Most people didn't understand how deeply integrated it was into his body. They thought it was some clunky piece of machinery strapped on for convenience. Kale didn't bother correcting them anymore. He'd been assigned to repair an ancient, terraforming machine buried deep within the jungle. The request had come from the Valeth themselves, or rather, from one of their overseers who barely acknowledged Kale's existence when giving orders. "Fix it," the alien had said coldly, its voice reverberating like rolling thunder. "If you fail, we will find someone else." Kale sighed at the memory. Humans were used to being treated like disposable tools by the Valeth. Their species had been dragged into interstellar politics kicking and screaming centuries ago, only to discover they were hopelessly outmatched by nearly every other race they encountered. While others built empires among the stars, humanity struggled to keep up, scraping by on scraps of opportunity and goodwill. Still, Kale took pride in his work. If nothing else, he could fix things. And if there was one thing humans excelled at, it was making do with what little they had. As he approached the site of the broken machine, Kale noticed something odd. The area around it was unnaturally quiet. Normally, the jungle buzzed with life-strange insects chirping, glowing plants swaying, but now, even the wind seemed hesitant to disturb the silence. The terraformer itself loomed ahead, half buried in moss and vines, its surface cracked and corroded. It looked ancient, far older than anything human engineers would have built. This wasn't just a machine, it was a relic. Kale knelt beside the control panel, brushing away layers of grime with his gloved hand. His prosthetic arm whirred softly as he connected diagnostic cables to the device. Lines of code scrolled across the small screen embedded in his forearm, translating the machine's language into something readable. What he saw made his brow furrow. The system wasn't malfunctioning because of wear and tear, it had been tampered with. Someone or something had deliberately sabotaged it before he could process this discovery. A low growl echoed behind him. Kale froze, his heart pounding. Slowly, he turned to see a figure emerging from the shadows. At first glance, it looked Valethon, imposing silhouette with glowing patterns etched into its exoskeleton, but as it stepped closer, Kale realized something was wrong. Its movements were jerky, unnatural, and its bioluminescent markings flickered erratically, as though struggling to stay lit. "Who are you?" Kale asked cautiously, rising to his feet. His prosthetic arm shifted slightly, ready to defend or adapt depending on the situation. The figure tilted its head, studying him with piercing, multifaceted eyes. For a moment, neither of them spoke. Then, the creature pointed at Kale's arm and said in halting, accented Galactic common, "Nice armor." Kale blinked, then shook his head. "It's not armor," he replied firmly. "It's my body." The creature stared at him, clearly confused. Then, without warning, it let out a sharp hiss and lunged forward. Kale instinctively raised his arm, which hardened into a shield-like surface thanks to its nanotech capabilities. The impact sent him stumbling backward, but he managed to stay upright. When the dust settled, the figure was gone, vanishing into the jungle as quickly as it had appeared. Kale stood there, breathing heavily, his mind racing. Who or what had attacked him? And why did they care about his arm? But more importantly, what secrets was this ancient machine hiding? Whatever the answer was, Kale knew one thing for certain. He was in way over his head, and yet, despite the danger, a spark of determination ignited within him. If there was one thing humanity had proven time and again, it was that they thrived in impossible situations. As Kale turned back to the terraform, his resolve hardened. He wasn't going to leave until he uncovered the truth, even if it meant challenging the very beings who ruled this world. Little did he know, his actions would soon change, not just his own fate, but the fate of all humanity. Kale spent the next several hours hunched over the terraforming machine, his prosthetic arm glowing faintly as it interfaced with the ancient device. The jungle around him remained eerily silent, as though holding its breath. Every now and then, he glanced over his shoulder, half expecting the strange Valeth-like figure to reappear, but nothing moved except the occasional ripple of liquid crystal streams. The sabotage was sophisticated, too sophisticated for an accident or random vandalism. Whoever had done this knew exactly what they were doing. Lines of corrupted code snaked through the machine's programming, disrupting its core functions. Kale frowned as he traced them back to their source. What puzzled him most was that the sabotage bore no resemblance to Valith technology. Their systems were elegant, almost artistic in design. This was messy, chaotic, like something deliberately meant to confuse. Okay, Kale muttered to himself, rubbing his temples. If you want to mess with me, fine, but let's see how clever you really are. He activated a subroutine in his prosthetic arm, a diagnostic tool designed to rebuild damaged circuits. As the nanobots swarmed into the machine, repairing connections and purging corrupted data, Kale felt a flicker of satisfaction. Humans might not have been able to build wonders like the Valith, but they could fix just about anything given enough time and ingenuity. Suddenly, the ground beneath him trembled. Kale stumbled, catching himself on the edge of the terraformer. A low rumble echoed through the jungle, growing louder with each passing second. The glowing trees began to sway violently, their light flickering like dying stars. Something big was coming. From the shadows emerged a group of Valith warriors, their exoskeletons gleaming ominously in the dim twilight. Unlike the overseer who had dismissed Kale earlier, these aliens carried themselves with an air of authority and menace. Their leader stepped forward, towering over Kale by at least 2 feet. Its voice boomed like rolling thunder. "What are you doing here, soft one?" it demanded, its multifaceted eyes narrowing. "This is forbidden territory." Kale straightened up, trying to mask his unease. He gestured toward the terraformer behind him. "I'm fixing your machine. Your overseer sent me." The Valith leader paused, tilting its head slightly. Then it let out a sharp laugh that sounded more like a bark. "You fix this? Impossible. Only the Valith possess the knowledge to repair such relics." Kale clenched his jaw but forced himself to stay calm. Arguing wouldn't help. Instead, he pointed at the diagnostic screen embedded in his arm. "Look for yourself. I've already repaired 60% of the damage. If you don't believe me, ask your engineers." For a moment, the Valith seemed unsure. Their species prided itself on technological superiority. Yet here was a human, supposedly inferior being doing something they claimed only they could do. It was unsettling. Before the leader could respond, another tremor shook the ground. This time, it was accompanied by a piercing screech that echoed through the jungle. Everyone turned toward the sound, including Kale. Emerging from the dense foliage was the same Valith-like figure that had attacked him earlier, only now, it wasn't alone. Dozens of similar creatures poured into the clearing, their movements jerky and unnatural, their bioluminescent markings flickering erratically. One of the Valith warriors hissed, raising a weapon. "They're not Valith," Kale said quickly, taking a step back. "They're copies, mimics." The mimic closest to Kale lunged at him, claws extended. Instinctively, his prosthetic arm shifted into a defensive configuration, forming a hardened shield just in time to block the attack. Sparks flew as metal scraped against metal. The mimic recoiled, hissing furiously before retreating into the crowd. The Valith warriors opened fire, their weapons emitting bursts of searing energy. Several mimics fell, their bodies dissolving into pools of shimmering liquid, but there were too many of them, and they kept coming, swarming closer with relentless determination. Kale realized he couldn't fight them, not directly. His prosthetic arm was powerful, but it wasn't a weapon. He needed another solution. Glancing at the partially repaired terraformer, inspiration struck. If he could activate it, even partially, maybe he could use its energy field to drive the mimics away. Without hesitation, Kale dove back to the control panel, ignoring the chaos erupting around him. His fingers flew across the interface, rerouting power flows and bypassing damaged systems. Behind him, the Valith continued to battle the mimics, their shouts and blasts of energy filling the air. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the terraformer hummed to life. A pulse of energy radiated outward, rippling through the jungle like a shockwave. The mimics froze mid-attack, their flickering lights dimming until they collapsed into motionless heaps. The jungle fell silent once more. Breathing heavily, Kale turned to face the Valith warriors. They stared at him, their expressions unreadable. For the first time, he saw something other than disdain in their eyes, something closer to curiosity, perhaps even awe. "You did this," the leader said slowly, its tone less hostile than before. "How? It's not magic," Kale replied, wiping sweat from his forehead. "It's problem-solving, something humans are pretty good at." The leader studied him for a long moment before nodding curtly. "Explain yourself, now." As the Valith gathered around him, Kale knew this was only the beginning. Whatever these mimics were, they weren't natural, and if the Valith didn't know about them, then something much larger and much darker was at play. But for now, Kale allowed himself a small smile. Against all odds, humanity had proven itself useful. Whether the Valith liked it or not, they'd need his help moving forward. And maybe, just maybe, that would be enough to change their minds about humans forever. The Valith didn't waste time. After the battle with the mimics, they escorted Kale back to their base, a sprawling crystalline fortress perched atop one of Zithara 7's jagged cliffs. The structure shimmered like a mirage under the dim light of the 3 moons, its walls pulsing faintly as though alive. To Kale, it looked less like architecture and more like an extension of the jungle itself, a testament to the Veileth's mastery over both nature and technology. Inside, the atmosphere was cold and sterile, a stark contrast to the organic warmth of the jungle outside. The corridors hummed softly, lined with glowing panels that cast eerie shadows on the polished floor. Kale felt out of place, his work boots scuffing against the pristine surface as he followed the Veileth warriors. Their leader, whose name he learned was Commander Zyrvath, walked ahead without looking back. Radiating authority with every step, they arrived at a large chamber filled with holographic displays and floating consoles. Several Veileth technicians hovered around, their movements precise and deliberate. At the center stood a massive hologram of the planet, its terrain layered with intricate data streams. Zyrvath gestured for Kale to approach. "Explain," the commander said simply, crossing its arms. Kale hesitated. He wasn't used to being in the spotlight, especially not among beings who had spent centuries dismissing humanity as irrelevant. But he reminded himself why he was here, to uncover the truth about the mimics and, perhaps, prove that humans weren't as weak as everyone thought. The terraformer wasn't malfunctioning on its own, Kale began, pointing at the hologram. It was sabotaged. Someone or something wanted it disabled. Those mimics, they're connected. I think they were guarding it. Zyrvath tilted its head, its bioluminescent markings flickering slightly. Guarding? From what? That's what we need to figure out, Kale replied. But first, let's talk about them. They're not natural. They're copies imperfect. Ones whoever made them used Veileth biology as a template, but they couldn't replicate your complexity. That's why their movements are jerky and their lights flicker. The room fell silent. The technicians exchanged uneasy glances, while Zyrvath's expression remained unreadable. Finally, one of the Veileths spoke up, its voice softer than the others. "If these mimics are based on us, does that mean someone is trying to replace us?" Kale nodded slowly. "It's possible. Or maybe they're just using your image to intimidate others. Either way, this isn't random. Someone knows how advanced you are and they're targeting you." Zyrvath stepped closer, its towering frame casting a shadow over Kale. "And yet, you fixed the machine. You drove them away. Why should we trust you?" Kale met the alien's gaze without flinching. "Because I'm human. We don't give up when things get hard. We adapt, improvise, survive. You can call me soft one all you want, but my species has been doing that for thousands of years." For a moment, no one spoke. Then Zyrvath turned to the other Veileth. "Prepare a team. We will investigate further." The next morning, Kale found himself aboard a sleek Veileth shuttle, heading toward a remote region of the jungle where the mimics had first appeared. Accompanying him were Zyrvath and two other warriors, along with a nervous-looking technician named Leary. She carried a scanning device that emitted soft beeps as it analyzed the environment. As they descended into the dense foliage, Kale couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. The jungle here was darker, the glowing plants dimmer, as if the life force of the land had been drained. The air felt heavier, pressing down on him like an invisible weight. "This place?" Leary murmured, her voice trembling. "Something feels wrong," Kale agreed. Even the insects were silent, their usual chirps replaced by an oppressive stillness. He tightened his grip on the toolkit, slung over his shoulder, his prosthetic arm humming faintly as it adjusted to the tension in his muscles. They soon reached a clearing dominated by a massive crater. In its center stood a strange, twisted amalgamation of metal and organic material, pulsating with sickly green light. Tendrils snaked out from its base, burrowing deep into the ground. The sight sent chills down Kale's spine. "What is this?" Zyrvath growled, raising its weapon. Before anyone could answer, the structure shifted. The tendrils retracted, revealing dozens of mimics emerging from the shadows. Unlike before, these ones moved with greater coordination, their flickering lights steadier, their forms more refined. "They've evolved," Kale whispered, backing away slowly. "Whatever created them is learning." The mimics charged, faster and more aggressive than before. The Veileth opened fire, their weapons cutting through several of the creatures, but reinforcements kept coming. Kale scrambled to find cover, behind a fallen tree trunk, his mind racing. Fighting wouldn't be enough, they needed another solution. Then he noticed something odd. The structure in the crater pulsed in sync with the mimics' movements, as though controlling them, if he could disrupt it. "I have an idea," Kale shouted over the chaos. "Distract them. I'll go for the core." Zyrvath hesitated, then nodded sharply. "Do it." With the Veileth drawing the mimics' attention, Kale sprinted toward the structure, dodging claws and blasts of energy. His prosthetic arm whirred as it adapted to the strain, forming tools and shields as needed. When he reached the base of the structure, he quickly hacked into its interface, rerouting power flows and destabilizing its core. The structure let out a deafening shriek, its green light flaring brightly. The mimics froze, their bodies convulsing before collapsing into lifeless heaps. The jungle trembled as the structure imploded, leaving behind only scorched earth. Breathing heavily, Kale turned to see the Veileth staring at him, their expressions a mix of shock and admiration. For the first time, he saw genuine respect in Zyrvath's eyes. "You may be soft," the commander said gruffly, but you are far stronger than I believed. Kale allowed himself a small smile. Told you so. But deep down, he knew this victory was only temporary. Whoever or wherever had created the mimics wasn't done yet. And as long as humanity continued to defy expectations, they would remain targets. Yet Kale also knew one thing for certain. Humans didn't back down from challenges. No matter how impossible the odds, they always found a way to rise above. The destruction of the mimic generator left the jungle eerily quiet. But Kale knew it was only a temporary reprieve. As he stood amidst the wreckage, his prosthetic arm worried softly as it recalibrated itself after the strain. He couldn't shake the feeling that they had merely scratched the surface of something much larger and far more dangerous. Zyrvath approached him, its glowing exoskeleton casting faint shadows on the scorched ground. The Valith commander's usual air of superiority seemed tempered now, replaced by an uncharacteristic thoughtfulness. You destroyed their core, Zyrvath said, its voice low and measured. But this is not over. They will return. Kale nodded, brushing dirt from his jacket. Yeah, I figured as much. Whoever made those mimics isn't just going to give up because we took out one of their machines. Leary, the nervous technician who had accompanied them, stepped forward hesitantly. In her hands, she held the scanning device, which now emitted a steady, rhythmic beep. Commander, she began, glancing at Kale before continuing the readings. They suggest there are more structures like this across the planet. Dozens, maybe even hundreds. The implications hung heavy in the air. If what Leary said was true, then the mimics weren't isolated incidents, they were part of a network, a coordinated effort to infiltrate and destabilize Zithra 7. And if the Velitha, supposed masters of this world, were being targeted, humanity's survival might hinge on stopping whatever force was behind it. We need to act fast, Zyrvath declared, turning to address the group. We'll send scouts to locate these other sites, but we cannot afford to divide our forces too thinly. We must prioritize. Kale raised a hand cautiously, drawing everyone's attention. If speed is what you're after, let me help. My prosthetic can interface with your systems directly. I can analyze data faster than your techs can process it manually. He paused, meeting Zyrvath's gaze. And I've got experience dealing with unpredictable situations. You saw how I handled things back there. For a moment, no one spoke, then Zyrvath gave a curt nod. Very well, you will assist us, but do not mistake this for trust, soft one. Kale smirked faintly. Fair enough. Back at the fortress, Kale found himself seated in front of a massive console, surrounded by holographic displays and blinking lights. His prosthetic arm hummed steadily as it connected to the system, sifting through terabytes of data at incredible speeds. Leary hovered nearby, occasionally offering input or adjusting settings when prompted. Hours passed, and fatigue began to creep in. But Kale refused to slow down. Every second counted, especially if the mimics or their creators were planning another attack. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, something unusual caught his eye. There, he said, pointing at a cluster of anomalies on one of the screens. These energy signatures match the generator we destroyed earlier. But look where they're located, they form a pattern. It's almost like coordinates. Leary leaned closer, her eyes widening. That's impossible. Those locations are sacred sites, places, central to Valith history and culture. Why would anyone target them? Kale frowned, tapping his fingers against the console. Maybe. It's not about targeting you specifically. Maybe it's about using your landmarks to create some kind of network, something bigger. Before anyone could respond, alarms blared throughout the fortress. Red warning lights flashed overhead, bathing the room in an ominous glow. A Valith guard burst into the chamber, shouting urgently, Commander, another wave of mimics has been detected near the capital. Zyrvath entered moments later, its expression grim. Prepare for deployment. All available units. Kale stood quickly, his heart pounding. Wait, let me come with you. If there's another generator, I can disable it the same way I did last time. Zyrvath hesitated, clearly torn between dismissing Kale's offer and acknowledging his usefulness. Finally, it nodded sharply. Fine, but stay close. The journey to the capital was tense. From the shuttle, Kale could see smoke rising. In the distance, dark plumes staining the twilight sky. When they arrived, the scene was chaos. Streets once bustling with Valith citizens were now overrun with mimics, their jerky movements sending waves of panic through the crowd. Buildings crumbled under the weight of relentless attacks, and the air was thick with dust and screams. Amidst the destruction stood another twisted structure, identical to the one they had destroyed earlier. Its tendrils stretched outward, pulsating, with sickly green light as it controlled the mimics swarming around it. This is bad, Kale muttered, clutching his toolkit tightly. If we don't stop this thing, it'll tear the city apart. Zyrvath turned to him, its bioluminescent markings flickering with urgency. Do what you must. We will hold them off. As the Valith warriors charged into battle, Kale sprinted toward the structure, dodging mimics and debris. His prosthetic arm shifted configurations rapidly, forming tools and shields as needed. Reaching the base, he quickly interfaced with the core, rerouting power flows and destabilizing its systems. But this time, something was different. The The structure resisted, its defenses adapting to his attempts to shut it down. Alarms blared inside the machine, and Kale realized with growing dread that whoever or whatever was behind this was learning from their previous encounters. "Come on," he muttered, sweat dripping down his face as he worked frantically. The mimics closed in, their claws slashing at him as he fought to maintain focus. Then, inspiration struck. Instead of trying to dismantle the core outright, he reprogrammed it to overload with a final keystroke. He initiated the sequence and dove for cover just as the structure erupted in a blinding flash of light. When the dust settled, the mimics lay motionless, their forms dissolving into pools of liquid crystal. The city was scarred, but alive. Slowly, survivors began to emerge from hiding, their expressions a mix of relief and disbelief. Zyrvath approached Kale, who sat slumped against a piece of rubble, exhausted but triumphant. For the first time, the Valeth commander extended a clawed hand toward him. "You have earned my respect, human," Zyrvath said solemnly. "Perhaps there is more to your species than I believed." Kale accepted the gesture, shaking the alien's hand firmly. "Glad to hear it. Now, let's finish this for all of us." In that moment, Kale realized the tide was shifting. The Valeth were beginning to see humanity not as weak or disposable, but as allies, capable of standing shoulder to shoulder against threats neither side could face alone. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The victory at the capital was short. As Kale and the Valeth regrouped, reports poured in from across Scythrus. 7 more mimic attacks were underway, each one more coordinated and devastating than the last. It wasn't just random chaos anymore. It was a calculated assault, targeting key locations that held cultural, historical, or strategic significance for the Valeth. The enemy, still unseen but undeniably intelligent, wasn't just trying to destroy. They were trying to dismantle the very foundation of Valeth society's Zyre. Vath convened an emergency council within the fortress, bringing together its top advisors, warriors, and technicians. Kale found himself seated among them, an oddity, given his human status, but no one questioned his presence. After what he'd done in the capital, even the most skeptical Valeth had begun to see him as an asset rather than a liability. "We are losing ground," Zyrvath admitted, its voice heavy with frustration. Holographic maps displayed the extent of the damage, entire regions destabilized, sacred sites overrun, and civilian populations fleeing in terror. "If we cannot stop these mimics soon, our people will lose faith in us. And if we fall, they'll come for humanity next," Kale finished quietly. He didn't need to elaborate. If the Valeth, the dominant species on this planet, couldn't withstand the onslaught, humanity would be utterly defenseless. Lyri spoke up nervously, clutching her scanning device tightly. "There's something else. The energy signatures from the mimic generators, they're growing stronger. Whatever is powering them isn't natural, it's synthetic, like a fusion reactor, but far more advanced." Kale frowned, leaning forward. "You said earlier that the locations form a pattern. Could they be building toward something? Like a final stage?" Lyri hesitated before nodding. "It's possible. If all the generators activate simultaneously, they could create a massive energy surge, one powerful enough to reshape the planet itself." The room fell silent. The implications were staggering. This wasn't just about sabotage or invasion. It was about domination on a planetary scale. "We need to strike now," Zyrvath declared, its tone resolute. "Every available unit must mobilize. We'll split into teams and neutralize as many generators as possible before they can synchronize." Kale raised a hand cautiously. "That's risky. Splitting your forces could leave you vulnerable. And if even one generator goes online during the surge, it might trigger the others." "Then what do you suggest?" Zyrvath asked sharply, though not unkindly. Kale took a deep breath. "Let me lead a small team. I can move faster without drawing attention, and my prosthetic can interface directly with their systems. If I can disable the central hub, the source, controlling all the generators, we might stop them before they reach critical mass." For a moment the council members exchanged uneasy glances. Sending a single human into the heart of the enemies operation was unprecedented and dangerous. But time was running out, and desperation bred bold decisions. Finally, Zyrvath nodded. "Very well. You will have 3 of my best warriors accompanying you. Choose wisely." Kale's team consisted of Lyri, whose technical expertise complemented his own, and 2 elite Valeth soldiers named Thalric and Silver. Both were seasoned fighters. Their exoskeletons gleaming with battle scars earned over decades of service. Though initially wary of working alongside a human, they quickly warmed to Kale's resourcefulness and determination. Their destination was a remote mountain range where scans indicated the central hub was located. The journey there was fraught with peril. Mimics patrolled the skies, their glowing forms darting between jagged peaks like predatory birds. The air grew colder as they ascended, and the jungle gave way to barren cliffs shrouded in mist. When they finally reached the site, Kale felt a chill run down his spine. The central hub loomed ahead, a towering monolith of black metal and pulsating green light. Unlike the smaller generators, this structure radiated power so intense it made his prosthetic arm hum audibly. Tendrils snaked outward from its base, burrowing deep into the mountainside and connecting to countless nodes scattered across the landscape. "This is it," Kale whispered, staring up at the ominous structure. "If we take this down, we shut everything off." Thalric stepped forward, raising his weapon. "Then, let us proceed. Time is not on our side." They moved carefully, avoiding patrols of mimics as they approached the hub. Kale interfaced, with its outer shell, bypassing layers of security protocols designed to keep intruders out. His prosthetic arm whirred steadily, adapting to each new challenge as it analyzed and dismantled the system piece by piece. But the closer they got to the core, the more resistance they encountered. Mimics began pouring out of hidden alcoves, their movements eerily precise. It was clear that their creators had anticipated this moment. They were ready. "Hold them off," Kale shouted, crouching near the control panel as his fingers flew across the interface. "I'm almost through." Sylvar and Thalric formed a defensive perimeter, their weapons firing relentlessly as Lyri provided cover with a portable shield generator. Sparks flew as metal clashed against metal, and the sound of combat echoed through the cavernous space. Kale worked furiously, sweat dripping down his face as he navigated the labyrinthine code protecting the core. The system fought back, launching countermeasures that threatened to fry his prosthetic completely. Pain shot through his arm as circuits overloaded, but he gritted his teeth and pushed forward. "I've got it," he exclaimed suddenly, initiating a shutdown sequence. The hub let out a deafening roar, its lights flickering wildly as power surged through its systems. But then, something unexpected happened. A figure emerged from the shadows, stepping into the dim light cast by the dying hub. It was humanoid, yet unmistakably alien, its body covered in shimmering scales, and its eyes glowing with an otherworldly intelligence. "You think this ends here?" the figure asked, its voice smooth and chilling. "You are too late." Before anyone could react, the creature raised its hand, and the hub erupted in a blinding flash of light. When the glare faded, Kale found himself lying on the ground, his vision swimming. Around him, his team struggled to recover, battered but alive. The hub was gone, reduced to smoldering ruins, and yet the mimics continued to move. What just happened?" Lyri stammered, clutching her scanner. Kale climbed to his feet, his expression grim. "Whoever that was, they're still out there, and they're not done with us." As the realization sank in, Kale knew the stakes had never been higher. Humanity and the Valeth had faced challenges before, but this was different. This was survival not just for themselves, but for everyone on XYTHER-7. And somehow, against all odds, they would find a way to win. The destruction of the central hub should have been a turning point, a decisive blow against the mimics and their creators. Instead, it left Kale and his team reeling, staring at the smoldering ruins with a mix of disbelief and dread. Despite their efforts, the mimics continued to operate, their movements even more coordinated than before. "They're not connected to the hub anymore," Lyri whispered, her voice trembling as she scanned the remnants of the structure. "But they're still functioning, like something else is controlling them now." Kale clenched his fists, frustration bubbling beneath the surface. His prosthetic arm whirred faintly, adjusting itself after the strain of interfacing with the hub's systems. He had sacrificed so much, risked everything to shut down the source, only to find that the true mastermind was still out there, pulling strings from the shadows. "We need answers," Kale said firmly, turning to face the others. "Whoever that creature was, it knew we were coming. It let us destroy the hub because it didn't matter. It wasn't the real threat." Thalric stepped forward, his weapon raised cautiously as he scanned the surrounding area. "Then where do we look next? If the hub wasn't the core, what is?" Kale's mind raced. Everything pointed to one conclusion. The enemy wasn't just targeting the Valeth or humanity, they were targeting the planet itself. Zitherus-7 wasn't merely a battleground, it was part of the plan. The mimics weren't just weapons. They were tools designed to reshape the world into something unrecognizable. "The jungle," Kale murmured suddenly, his eyes widening as pieces fell into place. "It's alive. The entire ecosystem is interconnected. The glowing trees, the liquid crystal streams, even the air we breathe. What if the mimics aren't trying to destroy it? What if they're trying to control it?" Lyri gasped, clutching her scanner tightly. "You think they're using the planet's energy? Tapping into its life force?" "It makes sense," Kale replied, nodding slowly. "If someone could harness that kind of power, they wouldn't just dominate this world, they'd control every living thing on it." Sylvar tilted his head, his multifaceted eyes narrowing thoughtfully. "If this is true, then the heart of the jungle must be the key. That's where the energy originates." Without hesitation, Zyrvath, who had joined them shortly after the hub's destruction, gave the order to the jungle's core. "Move quickly." The journey deeper into the jungle felt surreal. The once vibrant landscape grew darker, the glowing plants dimming as though siphoning their light to fuel some unseen force. The air thickened, heavy with an almost oppressive energy. Even the insects fell silent, leaving behind an eerie stillness that sent shivers down Kale's spine. When they reached the heart of the jungle, they found themselves standing before a massive crystalline tree unlike anything they'd seen before. Its trunk shimmered with veins of liquid crystal, pulsating in sync with the planet's rhythm. Above, its branches stretched endlessly toward the sky, each leaf emitting a soft, ethereal glow. It was beautiful and terrifying. "This is it," Leary breathed, her scanner buzzing wildly. "The energy signature here, it's off the charts." Before anyone could react, the ground beneath them trembled violently. From the shadows emerged the same alien figure who had mocked them at the hub. This time, however, it wasn't alone. Dozens of mimics surrounded it, their forms smoother, sleeker, more advanced than ever before. "You cannot stop what has already begun," the creature said, its voice resonating like rolling thunder. "Your interference only delays the inevitable." Kale stepped forward, his prosthetic arm shifting into a defensive configuration. "Why are you doing this? What do you gain by destroying this planet?" The creature tilted its head, studying him with cold, calculating eyes. "Destruction. No, transformation. This world will become a beacon nexus of power that will unite all civilizations under my rule, and you'll kill everyone here to do it." Kale shot back, anger rising in his chest. "That's not unity. That's tyranny." For a moment, the creature hesitated, as if genuinely surprised by Kale's defiance. Then it smirked, raising a hand toward the crystalline tree. "Then watch as your futile resistance crumbles." Energy surged through the tree, its glow intensifying until it became blinding. The mimics began to merge with the structure, their bodies dissolving into streams of liquid crystal that fed into the tree's roots. The jungle quaked as the transformation accelerated, threatening to consume everything. Kale turned to Leary, urgency in his voice. "Can we reverse it? Disrupt the process?" Leary shook her head frantically. "I don't know. I've never seen anything like this." "Then we improvise," Kale shouted, determination burning in his eyes. Turning to Zyrvath and the others, he added, "We overload it. Push too much energy into the system, and it'll collapse." Zyrvath hesitated for a split second before nodding sharply. "Do it." With the Valeth warriors holding off the remaining mimics, Kale sprinted toward the base of the tree, his prosthetic arm interfacing directly with its crystalline structure. Lines of code scrolled across the screen embedded in his forearm as he rerouted energy flows, amplifying the surge beyond safe limits. Pain shot through his body as the feedback overwhelmed his prosthetic, but he refused to stop. Humanity's ingenuity and sheer stubbornness was all they had left. Finally, with a deafening crack, the tree erupted in a burst of light. The mimics collapsed, their forms disintegrating into nothingness. The jungle trembled one last time before settling into silence. As the dust cleared, Kale slumped to the ground, exhausted but victorious. Around him the Valeth stared in awe, not just at the human who had saved them, but at the realization that humanity's strength lay not in brute force, but in resilience, creativity, and heart. And for the first time, they understood why humans deserved respect. The jungle of Zithra 7 was quiet once more, but it carried a new kind of stillness, a fragile calm after the storm. The crystalline tree at its heart stood dark now, its veins of liquid crystal dull and lifeless. The oppressive energy that had suffocated the land was gone, leaving behind an emptiness that felt almost sacred. Kale sat on the damp earth beneath the tree, his prosthetic arm hanging limply at his side. It had taken everything he had to overload the system, and though it worked, the cost was etched into both his body and spirit. Zyrvath approached him slowly, its towering frame casting a long shadow in the dim twilight. For the first time since they met, the Valeth commander's voice was soft, almost reverent. "You have done what no Valeth could. You stopped the destruction of our world." Kale looked up, exhaustion etched into every line of his face. "I didn't do it alone," he said quietly. "Your warriors fought alongside me. Leary helped decode the systems. Humanity might have been the spark, but we couldn't have one without you." Zyrvath paused, its bioluminescent markings flickering faintly, as if processing this unfamiliar concept. "Humans not as inferiors, but as equals." Finally, it nodded. Perhaps there is wisdom in your species' adaptability. Perhaps we underestimated you." A small smile tugged at Kale's lips, despite his weariness. "Not the first time someone's made that mistake. Won't be the last." In the days that followed, the Valeth began rebuilding their shattered society. The mimics were gone, their creators vanquished along with the crystalline tree's corrupted energy. Though the jungle would take time to heal, the planet itself remained intact, a testament to the resilience of life and the determination of those who defended it. Kale became something of a legend among the Valeth. Stories spread of the soft one who had defied expectations, using ingenuity and courage to save a world that wasn't even his own. Humans, once dismissed as irrelevant, were now regarded with newfound respect. Zyrvath personally ordered the dismantling of discriminatory policies against humanity, opening doors for collaboration and cooperation between their species. But Kale didn't stay to bask in his newfound fame. After helping the Valeth stabilize their defenses, he prepared to leave Zithra 7. His work here was done, and Earth's orbital colonies awaited his return. As he boarded the shuttle provided by the Valeth, Zyrvath appeared one final time to see him off. "You are leaving," Zyrvath stated, its tone neutral but tinged with something akin to regret. "Will you return?" Kale shrugged, adjusting his tool belt. Who knows, maybe someday. But right now, I've got a galaxy full of problems waiting for me back home. Zyrvath extended a clawed hand, a gesture of gratitude and respect. Kale shook it firmly, meeting the alien's gaze without hesitation. Take care of this place, he said. It's worth fighting for. As the shuttle ascended into the sky, Kale gazed out the window at the glowing jungle below. Despite everything, the battles, the sacrifices, the pain, he felt a sense of fulfillment. Humanity had proven itself yet again, not through brute strength or advanced technology, but through creativity, empathy, and sheer willpower. Months later, aboard a human transport vessel en route to Earth, Kale found himself reflecting on the journey. He pulled out a small shard of liquid crystal from Zithris 7, tucked safely into a pocket of his toolkit. It shimmered faintly in the low light, a reminder of the world he'd saved and the lessons he'd learned. One evening, during a quiet moment in the ship's mess hall, a young engineer approached him hesitantly. "Excuse me, sir," she said, her voice filled with admiration. "I heard about what you did on Zithris 7. How did you manage it? What kept you going when things seemed impossible?" Kale smiled faintly, leaning back in his chair. "It's simple," he replied. "We're human, we don't give up. Not because we're stronger or smarter than anyone else, but because we know how to stand together, to adapt, to keep moving forward no matter what." The engineer nodded thoughtfully, her eyes shining with inspiration. Kale turned back to the shard of crystal, watching its faint glow pulse rhythmically. In that moment, he realized something profound. Humanity's greatest strength wasn't just survival, it was hope. Hope that no matter how dire the situation, they could find a way to rise above it. And so, as the stars streaked past the viewport and the hum of engines filled the air, Kale allowed himself a rare moment of peace. The galaxy was vast, unpredictable, and often cruel, but it was also full of possibilities. And wherever humanity went next, they would carry with them the same unyielding spirit that had carried them this far. Because humanity wasn't defined by armor or weapons or grand empires. They were defined by their hearts, their ability to endure, to innovate, to care. And in the end, that was enough. Asterisk, asterisk, nice armor, Zervath had said once. Asterisk, 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 it's not armor, Kale had replied. It's my body. Asterisk, asterisk. Now, looking back, Kale understood that the true strength of humanity lay not in their bodies or even their machines, but in their indomitable souls, and that, above all else, was why humanity deserved to call the stars their home.